Welcome again to Makery by Mooney. This is going to be a homebrewing video, and it was inspired by an established brew tube, if you will, video channel by the name of Doing the Most Brewin, and he came up with a recipe for cherry chocolate wine for Valentine's Day. Mine is a variation on his recipe. He had frozen cherries with which he racked grape juice onto, and I think he got two standard sized chocolate bars and mashed them up and threw those into the must, and just fermented it that way, which I thought was an interesting recipe and creative idea. With me, I just got cherry juice with no preservatives and baking cocoa with no preservatives, and I mixed that. It's about 2 cups of sugar with maybe 3 tablespoons of the baking cocoa. My thing is a lot of candy bars likely have to have some kind of preservative, and this cocoa powder had no preservative, which is obviously going to inhibit your fermentation. You know, it's going to either keep your yeast from doing what they need to do, or it's going to kill them altogether. So we'll see how this works out. Now, for those of you who are new to home brewing, there's a secret. You know, you have to get your what you're brewing to maybe about blood temperature, which basically, if you put your finger in it, it doesn't feel uncomfortably hot. So that's anywhere from maybe 190 to 110 degrees. And that's the temperature threshold at which yeast start to die. Obviously, your yeast is the main component, so you don't want your yeast to die. I'm gonna go ahead and throw my cherry juice in here. As you continue to watch my channel, you'll notice that I'm a very hands-off brewer. As long as I don't have like detritus on my hands or something like that, visible dirt, gunk, whatever, I consider my fingers to be sanitized enough. Here's my lovely wife, Leah.
Hi.
She snuck up on me here.
Where's the chocolate? I want chocolate.
So I kind of do things the old way. I don't over obsess about things. I used to check original gravity and pH and all that other stuff. But I've been doing this since 2010, and I've kind of got a feel for it. You know what I mean? So if you feel of this right now, it's a little above blood temperature. I'm going to turn the heat off and take it off the heat. And one of the problems with getting your must, wort, whatever cooled down, I won't even go into wort because beer is a whole different matter, but getting your must cooled down quickly, don't heat it above what you're needing to heat it to begin with, and cooling it down is not going to be a problem. This is a bit warm right now, and you could solve that by putting either ice cubes or cold tap water in it, but that's going to dilute the original gravity, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is pitch my about 2 cups of sugar with probably about 3 tablespoons of cocoa into the wort, and that is going to go some way into cooling it down. Just gonna have to reach some kind of equilibrium of temperature by dissolving this solid part of the recipe, and it's all kind of a experimental recipe, but not necessarily. I mean, this is not necessarily an unprecedented thing. Smells good so far. It's still a little above blood temperature for my liking to pitch yeast. The funny thing about yeast, whether you're talking about treating a yeast infection or anything else, is yeast have very similar thresholds of life or death to human beings. If you get actually water temperature, when it comes to water temperature, they will die at a water temperature of like 120 degrees, which a human can survive easily. So, in that sense, yeast are much more fragile than humans. In another sense, they can be a lot more they can withstand more. in the sense that when it comes, very cold, like we're talking below freezing, yeast don't really die. They just go dormant. If you have a human being exposed to the elements, definitely below freezing, for any time at all, they're going to die. Not sure really where I was going with that, but we're going to wait till it's, blood temperature before we pitch yeast. That is a beautiful color. I wish you could smell that, because that is like the most beautiful cherry chocolate scent. But the thing is, whenever the yeast strip all that out, they use up all the sugar and turn it into carbon dioxide and alcohol. Some of that, to say the least, some of that sweetness is not going to be there anymore. So, we'll see how it turns out. This is another full-length kind of video, which is what I was wanting to do. This is just one example of me really being a hands-off, kind of low-tech brewer. Most brewers, even the most low-tech of them, would balk at me seeing me putting my fingers in here like that. And I've not sanitized them. I don't buy Star San. I don't buy any kind of hands or any kind of sanitizer. As far as I'm concerned, I've never had I can't say I've never had an infection in my brews, but it's been like a 1 in a million. And I kind of subscribe to Ernest P. Worrell's "The Old Ways Are the Best." Kind of keep it simple, stupid. As long as my hands are mostly clean, I've never had problems with an infection. I know the pH of my medium. I know all the other parameters of the ingredients I'm using. I know my original gravity and my final gravity, and everything else up to that point is just experience. I've been doing this, like I said, since 2010, and it's like a bicycle. I know what I'm doing. So once this is down to blood temperature, I feel some sugar chunks down in there still. We'll try to get them broke up. We are going to pitch yeast, but that's an interesting point. I bought this little jar of Fleischmann's. I always use bread yeast because it can get up to 13% ABV and it's cheaper. So get over it. But I've never bought a jar before. I always bought like the 3-pack packets. It came like a 3-pack of packets. And it says after opening I'm supposed to refrigerate this. So I'm going to proof it, see if it creates what Brian and Derek from Citystead Brewing call a foam dome. And if it does not, then I'm going to use, I do have some like actual packets of active dry yeast, and I will use that. Just trying to create a fail-safe. Get these sugary chunks broke up. God, that smells good. You want to come smell this, Leah? Okay. It's just like the really nicest chocolate cherry smell. Hopefully, once it's fermented, it smells just as good. Hopefully. I think all the sugar's dissolved in there. All right. When I want to try to proof my yeast, see if it's effective, if it's going to work, what I usually do is get a little cup full and then drop the kind of prescribed amount, which is, I'll be right back. The packet gram amount has rendered the gram amount incalculable in my wary mind, so we're just gonna kind of eye it here. Kind of go with the typical amount that you would use here. And while we're waiting for that to proof, see if it's going to work, I will read you some excerpts from Brew Like a Yeti, a book that my wife was nice enough to buy me for my birthday. I'll be right back. Right. This is optimal conditions, right? At the time, they began to get creative and looked for what was already available from local farmers. Since not many locals were growing barley until they convinced some farmers to grow it for them, they went with the ample wheat supply and began malting wheat. This allowed for a localized character in beers brewed from the grains they malted. In turn, consumers were willing to pay a bit extra to drink something truly local. Andrea and Kristen are now able to generally acquire the type of grains they and their brewing customers want, in part by sharing the risk with some farmers to purchasing the seeds for the grains that they want to grow. They also started a brewer-supported agriculture program based on the community-supported agriculture concept for BSAs. Brewers help fund the production and malting of the grain they in turn make into beer. In 2013, Andrea helped found the Craft Maltsters Guide (CMG) after finding other people across the country interested in starting malt houses for lacking the resources to do so on an artisanal scale. The Guild provides a centralized set of resources and networking opportunities for artisanal maltsters. And in 5 years has grown to include malt houses, including breweries and distilleries with their own malting operations across the U.S. and Canada, with over 30 active members, including Blacklands Malt in Leander, Texas, Eckert Malting and Brewing Company in Chico, California, Riverbend Malt House in Asheville, North Carolina, House Malts in Cleveland, Ohio, Horton Ridge Malt in Hortonville, Nova Scotia, and Peterson Malt in Moncton, Vermont. So put some perspective on this because I kind of started this in the middle of a story. This is describing modern breweries. Just to take, for example, Asheville, North Carolina, they are famous for having the perfect water profile as far as like mineral profile for brewing beer. You really don't have to do much to their tap water to make it acceptable for brewing beer. And the perfect channel to watch for that is, of course, I don't have any people supporting me here, but Clawhammer Supply, they create distilling and brewing equipment. They're based out of Asheville, North Carolina, and if you've never seen them, they've got really high quality production values, a lot of humor in their videos. It's just fun to watch. So give them a look up. On the subject of water, which is a important factor no matter what you're brewing. This is an excerpt from William Ellis, the London and Country Brewer, 1736. Water next to malt is what by course comes here under consideration as a matter of great importance in brewing of wholesome fine malt liquors, and is of such consequence that it concerns everyone to know the nature of the water that he brews with, because it is with the vehicle by which the nutritious and pleasant particles of the malt and hop are conveyed into our bodies, and there becomes a diluter of our food. For one thing, they were saying that water quality was second only to malt quality. When you say malt, you're saying you harvested any kind of grain. Now, the ideal was wheat, but any kind of grain, spelt, corn, wheat, whatever, rye, could be malted. If it's grain, it could be malted. That basically means that you get it slightly wet, not soaking wet, but slightly wet. You heat it up. You're making that grain think that it's spring, and that the germ in that grain starts to wake up and produce starches. And you let it lay on a threshing floor for a little while. And obviously my description of it here is somewhat inarticulate, but you let it develop grains, and then you boil it. You turn those grains, starches into sugars, and that's your basis. Once you pitch your yeast, that yeast turns those sugars that were once starches into alcohol. So speaking of alcohol, let's see how our foam dome's doing. It's doing something there. Definitely got activity there. So we're gonna pitch that into our main muster. And push maybe a few more just tablespoons in there. Just as yeast insurance, as Brian Derrick always say. Kind of see how it turns out. God, that smells good. Right. Try to do a little follow-up video on whether the yeast colony developed successfully. Okay. Thanks for watching Makery by Mooney.